Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody know that the stream is going on.
Hi, my name is Jules.
What's going on, Steve Wallamack? I'm going to get started right now. Now, tonight's live stream topic is about the alleged Whisper Network that is a part of the comic book industry and the weakness of the men in the comic book industry. Now, this whole live stream was inspired by a comment I got from a viewer on my video about Tom King attacking Jay Lee, and they told me that this incident was a symptom of the rot in mainstream comics and not an isolated incident. And they went on to talk about this Whisper Network that had been going on, this group of females who have all of this alleged influence, and these women have gone out of their way to create these groups on social media to go after men they have an issue with and make those men either bend the knee or find a way to get those men thrown out of the industry. Now, when I heard about this whole Whisper Network, it was one of those things that made me think about my book, Stop Simping in the Workplace. Now, that book, Stop Simping in the Workplace, and we'll leave a link to that book. I talk about how you have these workplace simps, and the workplace simps are the ones who create the environment where these predatory females take control over a workplace. And the reason why they take control over a workplace is because the men in the work environment are not strong enough to lead the environment. And because they are too weak to lead the environment, what happens is these predatory females then gain control over the workplace, and they start having the workplace being under their terms and not the standards and terms of the leadership running the company. And that's what's happening right now in the comic book industry. We have a whole host of workplace simps in charge of the comic book industry. And these workplace simps are following something that Gordon Ramsay talked about on his show, Hell's Kitchen. Now, Gordon Ramsay, many years ago, while I was watching him on season 3, he once advised Hell's Kitchen season 3 winner Rock. He told him that either you run the kitchen or the kitchen runs you. And once I heard that statement, I automatically knew what Gordon was talking about. And he was saying that either you control the work environment or the work environment will control you. And what's happened in the comic book industry is editorial is allowing the comic book industry to run it instead of running the comic book industry. And the reason why that's going on is because we have a whole group of beta males in charge at editorial, and these beta males are not setting the standards for the work environment. They are not setting the rules for the work environment. They are not setting the tone for the work environment. And they're not even going out here and standing up and taking a leadership role. And that example we can see with what happened with your Tom King and your Jay Lee, because when I look at that whole incident and I take a look at it from a perspective as a publisher with over 25 years of experience in the business, I see the weakness and ineffectiveness of the leadership as related to that whole situation, because every publisher out here, anybody who works freelance writing or has a contract with a publisher, we all know you have no control over what cover a publisher decides to put on your project. And when you're working on a project that's work for hire, like the Rorschach comic that Jay Lee was commissioned to do a variant cover for, you are basically a contractor who has been hired to do your portion of the job. So as a contractor, you are hired to either go out here and be commissioned to write a script, or you're commissioned to do a interior art, or you're hired to do lettering, or you're hired to do coloring, or you are hired to do something like variant covers. And as part of the creative team, your job is to contribute your part, and then it's put together with other pieces of the parts that are contributed by all of the people. And the editor is supposed to be the one in charge of making sure that all of these people are together and on the same page. And it's the editor's job to lead that project and make sure that that project is together and on time. And that's all you need to do. But when we look at this situation with your Tom King, again, it shows the weakness of leadership, because here we have your Tom King attacking a co-worker and a co-contractor on a project in Jay Lee on social media, something that is highly unprofessional and even violates DC's own social media policy. And what does your Jim Lee do? He does absolutely nothing. And that's what beta males do when they're placed in a position of management. They do absolutely nothing because beta males are afraid of conflict. And the reason why beta males are afraid of conflict is they are afraid of offending someone. They're afraid of hurting someone's feelings. But if you are placed in a leadership position, you cannot be afraid of offending someone. Your job is to maintain the standards that are established by leaders, by management, and the ownership of the company. And your job is to make sure that everybody is following those standards. That is what a leader does. Unfortunately, we have a problem in the comic book industry where males do not really want to take leadership positions. And that's really bad when you have a workplace. When you have a workplace with a beta male in charge, what happens is, instead of the leaders running the company is winding up being run by the people in the company, and even worse, people outside of the company. Thank you for the super chat, Massive Panda. He says the comic book industry will never be able to gain new readers because of their constant negativity, which that only drives people away. They're so unprofessional. I have to agree with that, because when it comes down to the comic book industry, they are so unprofessional. They are so negative. And this negative energy is the thing that pushes customers away, because customers want to come in, they want to get enthusiastic, they want to get excited about a project. And what happens is, because you have these people, these toxic people inside of the comic book industry, they practically torpedo any momentum a project gets. They torpedo any anticipation a project gets because these people are just so filled with negativity. And it's that negativity that turns people away from a product. And they don't understand that in business, you want anticipation, you want excitement, because when people anticipate a product, they're going to go out here and get ready to either spend money or put in a pre-order. And that Rorschach book wound up losing all of its anticipation and its momentum, all due to this drama. And again, this drama was due to Tom King basically being one of these beta males. And when it comes down to these beta males, they look to go out here and start this drama in the workplace because these men do not know how to go out here and resolve conflict in a constructive manner. And with your Tom King, he's clearly a textbook beta because his approach to going after your Jay Lee, that's something only a coward would do, because he only went after Jay Lee because he didn't have the backbone to go after his editors. And he started all of this drama because he didn't want to have a confrontation with Jim Lee, because Jim Lee would have probably told him, look, in this business, you are an independent contractor. And as an independent contractor, we commission you to write a script for our licensed properties. And once we have gotten your script, we can do whatever we want after that. And you just take your commission check and call it a day. That's the way it goes in traditional publishing. Once you have done your part on a project, you don't have any say over, again, the interiors, the lettering, the coloring. You have no say over any of those things. And he knew that he was going to get called out on that by editorial. So he took the coward route and went after Jay Lee, looking to start drama because he didn't have the backbone or the stones to confront the editors at his company. And again, it shows the weakness of the men in the comic book industry and shows me that the comic book industry is chock full of workplace simps. And when you have a workplace filled with workplace simps, you're not going to have a productive work environment. Because when you have a workplace simp, you have a man in a work environment who is completely submissive to women, and he only looks to follow female authority. And when you have a guy like that, that's a guy who is not going to be someone who has the courage to go out here and take risks. He's not going to have the courage to go out here and take challenges. He's not going to have the courage to go out here and stand up. No, whenever he runs into women, what he's going to do is submit to those women. And when he submits to those women, he doesn't understand the danger he's putting himself in, because your workplace simp thinks that by going out here and submitting to the so-called Portland Mafia and the so-called Whisper Network, he's going to receive some favor. Because when it comes down to beta males, they often believe in creating these covert contracts with these kinds of women, believing if I give her what she wants, then I'll be able to get what I want. And usually these covert contracts never work, because usually the woman never says what she wants. The guy expects something completely different, and then they wind up becoming extremely angry at the end because neither party gets what they want. And these simps, they believe that they can go out here and run the comic book industry by caving to a group of these women in the Portland Mafia and this Whisper Network. And they don't understand that they're coming from a place of weakness. Now, I go in depth on this in my books, Stop Simping in the Workplace and Stop Simping. I left a link to Stop Simping in the Workplace in the chat, and I'm going to leave a link to the classic Stop Simping, which is one of those books I believe every comic fan now desperately needs to read, because we got a lot of simps in this industry, and they don't see how their simping is doing damage to the business. So I'm gonna leave a link to those. And this is a big problem in the comic book industry. These simps, they bend the knee to the females, and they sit there and they think, oh, if I go out here and I give her a pass for her irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behaviors, then I'll get a pass for things that I do. Unfortunately, that's not how it works in the world of business. And it's definitely not the way it works in this era of Me Too, because in this era of Me Too, what happens is simps get chewed up by female predators and spit out by female predators. And the reason why they get chewed up and spit out by these female predators is because these dudes go out here, they cave to these women, and when they cave to these women, what they do is give these women leverage, and that leverage allows them an opportunity to control the narrative and control the argument about the workplace and control how these guys are perceived in the workplace, because all it takes is one allegation by one of these female predators, and these guys can wind up losing their job. They actually start putting one foot out the door by caving to these women and looking to submit and defer to them out of fear. Now, the reason why these guys go out here and simp for these women, primarily in the comic book industry, is because a lot of these guys, again, some of them I believe come from single mother households, or they weren't taught male life skills about how to deal with female predators in the workplace by their fathers or other men in the workplace. So a lot of these guys, they don't have the life experience to understand how to deal with women in the workplace. They're thinking that these women are all so powerful. They have all of these connections. They have all this ability, and that's got them intimidated by these women. But there's nothing to be intimidated about when you approach them from a critical thinking perspective and an objective perspective. Because when you come from an objective and critical thinking perspective, like I present in books like Stop Simping in the Workplace, and The Man Crisis, you start to see that these females in this so-called Portland Mafia and this so-called Whisper Network, they're not the threat you think they are. They're not the threat people think they are. I mean, the only reason why people are intimidated is because they are so caught up in social media. But once you start pulling away from social media and you step into the real world, you start to see how little power these females have. Now, according to one of the articles I read on Bleeding Fool, the two-part article I read regarding this Whisper Network, it is alleged, well, I didn't put that wrong. Bleeding Fool article, I put it there. According to this article, this group is online, and they're making all of these rumors and all of this gossip about these men in the comic book industry. And this is typical of females in any workplace. But men who are strong leaders and strong authority figures, they don't follow the rumors, they don't follow the gossip. And the reason why they don't follow the rumors and the gossip is because they know, as leaders, they set the tone, they set the standards, and they don't need gossip in order to do their business. Their business is done directly face to face because men go face to face with any other man they engage in. Only beta males go and listen to gossip. Beta males need to go out here and follow the female because females need gossip in order to control an work environment and control the people in a work environment. But strong male leaders, they don't care about gossip because they deal in facts, they deal in logic, they deal in reason. And if they're not the one who gave out the information, they don't care about what anyone else says. So usually when you have a work environment that's controlled by gossip, what happens is it just, again, shows a complete breakdown of the leadership in a workplace. It shows that the leadership in the workplace has deteriorated, and it shows that the bosses are not running the work environment. And that's really dangerous when you have a business and when you have your subordinates running the business and controlling the communications of the business and controlling the narrative of the day-to-day business. And practically, when they do that, they hijack the mission of the business, because when you have your gossipers controlling everything and you have outside people controlling everything, that shows that there's a problem with the leadership. And when your people are not leading, then you have a problem with that's the problem you have. And that's what I see with the comic book industry is we have a serious leadership problem. We have a problem where people are letting others run their business, and these people, they run their mouths, and they talk about how they're dictating things and how they're going to control things. But as I see it, as a business owner, you don't control anything unless your name is on the paycheck or you're the one who's in charge of making sure everybody is getting paid. In the freelance business, it is the publisher who is the one who has the final say. It is the publisher who is the one in charge, and it is the publisher who has to go out here and set the tone. And when I look at DC's leadership under Jim Lee and Marvel's leadership under C.B. Cebulski, I see truly weak leadership, because no outside forces should be dictating to how a company is run. No outside forces should dictate who should be hired. No outside sources should be telling you how to run things. It's just like Gordon Ramsay talked about. Either you run the kitchen or the kitchen runs you. And the comic book industry has been led by men who are following behind others out here. And when you are a follower, your business is going to fall because you're not going in a direction where you want to go. So instead of you setting goals for increasing your sales, goals for what characters you want to push in a year, and goals to synergize the launch of a character with merchandising like Marvel Legends, we have people focused on gossip, we have people focused on drama, and we have people focused on nonsense. And that, again, shows the weakness of leadership, and it shows how sad the industry has become because it's so filled with these workplace simps. And these workplace simps are looking to please the females who, in many cases, don't even work at these companies, instead of looking to put themselves first and focus on what direction they want to take their careers in. This is where that really gets bad for a lot of these guys in the comic book industry. They don't really understand the long-term damage, they're doing to themselves, because when you have a group of females, two groups of females practically telling you what to do, then what does that say about you? And what does it say to other employers about you as a leader? I mean, you can't expect to stay in this comic book industry forever, because when you're chasing other people, what happens is your industry implodes and you're going to look for another job, and people are going to look at you and say, this dude, he did not lead when he had a leadership role. This dude followed around a lot of women. He did what these females told him. And that right there is something that other bosses, especially top level executives, are going to look at you and go, you're following behind a female. That really shows that you're not really a strong leader. And you're following behind females who don't even work at your own company, which really shows me that you really are a weak guy, because you're sitting here afraid of two groups of women who don't even, again, work at your company. And if they do work for you, they're working freelance as contractors. They're not in any sort of editorial position. They have no real managerial power over you. And you're going to sit there and be afraid of these females. It's just like what I was saying about these so-called SYSBM black men who call themselves the save yourself black man. They're going to run away they're going to sit there and talk about black women are so bad and they need to travel overseas to get other women, but they don't understand how they look to those other women in foreign countries when you present that argument. Oh, my women are so bad, I have to come over here. Those women and those men in those other countries look at you and go, if you could not lead in your space, then how can you come over here and be a leader in our space? And if you are going out here and bending the knee to these women in your space, you're going to be a weak link in our space. And we don't need a weak link in our space, because a weak link is going to be the thing that undermines our authority structures, or undermines our order, and undermines how we have things, our structures, and have things set up. Because a weak man is going to make compromises, and those compromises are going to be the thing that could lead to the decline of everything we're trying to build. So many men, when they see weak people like that, they don't want anything to do with them. And the reason why they don't want anything to do with them is because they see individuals like that as a threat to their economic base. They see them as a threat to their financial base. They see them as a threat to their ability to build and maintain resources. So they will just say, look, I'm not having this guy over here because he is weak. But the comic book industry, they look forward to bringing in weak men because they are afraid of strong men. And the reason why they are afraid of strong men is because they know that strong men will come in, they will establish standards, they will set boundaries, and they're going to set order. And when they come in and establish those boundaries and set order, what they're going to do is come in from an objective perspective, and they're going to start tearing apart the arguments of many of these people in this so-called Whisper Network and this so-called Portland Mafia. And they're going to do it out loud because a strong male leader, he's going to come in and say, I don't need to whisper. I don't need any gossip. If you want information about something, you come directly to me and you discuss it directly with me. If you have any issues about the rules or the things we're doing here, you come talk to me. And if you want jobs, you will come and get a job directly from me. I'm the one doing the hiring. I'm the one doing the firing. And no one else has control over those things but me, because I am the one running the business. That's what a leader is going to say to people. And they're going to look at these so-called people with their so-called influence and tell them how full of crap they actually are. Because when I was reading that article talking about how these females were so influential, I just looked at it and said, this is just some BS. Because if these were such big wheel women in the comic book industry, then they would have made steps to move their careers forward the way I've made efforts to move my career forward. They wouldn't just be sitting here trying to get jobs writing comics, which in the publishing industry is considered the absolute lowest level. No, they would be out here looking to develop and expand their skills to go out here and write things like novels like The Temptation of John Haynes, which I have wrote this back in 2005 and published it in 2011. Or they would go out here and write some of the most ultimate books out here. This is considered the highest tier in the publishing world. You'd go out here and write a nonfiction book like The Man Crisis. And again, these are considered higher levels of writing in the publishing world. And you would be looking to go out here and expand your skills to go out here and write something with a lot more substance and a lot more technique than a comic book. So that shows me, oh, they've got all this influence. No, you don't have any influence, because if you were the big fish, like you say, you would be in other ponds and you would be out here getting your projects out here either in publishing platforms like with trade publishers, or you would be out here getting a project greenlit for a screenplay greenlit. Those are the higher levels on the writing pecking order. And if these people were on higher levels of the writing pecking order, they would not be in the comic book industry, which has always been considered one of the lowest rungs in the publishing industry. You wouldn't be here for 10, 15, 20, 25 years sitting here talking about we're controlling the comic book industry. No, you would be out here making trade paperbacks, and you would be with trade publishers of paperbacks, either in the romance division, the YA division. You would have creds like those on your resume, and you would be out here making these type of creds. And after you've made these creds and got these sales, what you would be doing is looking to expand by either going into the foreign rights, or you would be out here looking to market and merchandise whatever characters you've done. So when I listened to that argument, sitting there talking about how these women in the Portland Mafia and these women in the Whisper Network have all this power, it was like, as a publishing pro, I laughed at that, because I said, if you had juice like that, again, you would be producing a novel and getting that to the marketplace, or you would be doing serial YA fiction like John Haynes and the ISIS series, which are considered, again, higher levels than comics, or you would go for the ultimate, which is a nonfiction book, because nonfiction books are considered the biggest money in the whole publishing business. When you do nonfiction, that is a sign that you are a serious writer and you have serious cred, because once you have gone out here and done hard research, and you have gone out here and put together a book with hard research, that really shows how serious you are of a writer and how much of a master you are of your craft. So when I sit there and listen to them talk about, oh, they're so influential, that's something meant to intimidate many of these simps out here who really don't know anything about the publishing business. Because a lot of guys who are part of the comic book world, all they know is the comic book part of the publishing business. they don't know anything about the trade part of the publishing business, and they don't know that this person isn't a big wheel. Thank you, Chris Brown. Chris is the creator of the Omega Black manga, and that Indiegogo is going to launch at midnight. So I don't have a link to it yet, but it's a great black manga, and I urge you guys to please put in your pledge for the Indiegogo when it launches. I'm going to do a video on it when it launches to let everybody know it's coming out. And I also want you to know, guys, to know about another brother who is out here who is doing a Indiegogo. Let's see if I can point it up. Here it is. Raymond Leonard, he's doing a great Indiegogo called Agent Solo. He's like at $2,000. He wants to get to $5,000. So I really want everybody to go help him out. This comic is really great. It reminds me of the 90s, but Chris is launching on midnight, I think West Coast time, and you definitely want to go pick that one up. It's going to be fantastic, but I really want people to really, when you're reading these comic articles, to really think about them, because I'm coming to you from a publisher's perspective, and I listen to this whole Whisper Network stuff, and this stuff has to be torn apart and deconstructed, because these people, they're thinking that they have power, but again, if you had real power and real pull, you would be out here getting your stuff in the hands of people who can go out here and do different things. You would be out here trying to get an adaptation of your material. You'll be selling your stuff and licensing it out. I mean, if you have intellectual property like I have, like ISIS or John Haynes, you would be sitting there going, okay, I'm going to be talking to either toy companies about licensing. I'm going to be talking to animated companies about licensing. I'm going to be talking to other companies about merchandising. That's what an influencer does in the business. That's what a big wheel does in the business. But most comic people, they're like, oh, these are big fish. They're big wheels. Like, no, they're not big fish at all. I mean, if you had that kind of influence, again, you would be looking to expand your business and expand your brand. You would have intellectual properties that you own. You would not be looking to try to control work for hire jobs or trying to get people fired off of work for hire jobs, because that's what working at the big two is. It's a work for hire job. And the work for hire job means you are going out here and they assign you a project. You sign a contract to get that project out by a certain time. And once you have finished doing that job, you don't own anything as related to that project. You don't control anything to that project. It's work for hire. And you have a lot of people getting into this drama and this controversy, not understanding what these people are fighting over are crumbs on the publishing table, because these jobs that they call themselves trying to make people bend the knee and be scared of, these are not considered, again, big league jobs in the publishing industry, because, again, these are work for hire jobs. You're sitting there trying to get people fired off a work for hire job. Yes, it's a cred. Yes, it's a gig. Yes, it will build your reputation. But at the end of the day, you're not owning anything. You're basically working for crumbs on the table. And when you work for crumbs on the table, you're just an employee, and you don't want to be employee. I mean, when I look at comics, you want to be an owner, you want to be an entrepreneur, and you want to own your intellectual property. Like I own John Haynes and I own ISIS. You want to go out here and own something, because when you own something, you have a say over it. And these people, they're sitting there going, oh, we have a say over who gets hired. But what are you getting hired for? You're getting, hired for a work for hire job where you're possibly, especially a lot of these newer talents, you're not even getting paid that much per page because your page rates are low because you don't have a reputation for sales. And you're sitting there thinking that this is something, but that's not anything at all. And then you're not even focused on the goals you need to be focused on. Because when I look at a lot of these people and what they were presenting on social media inside of those articles, I was saying to myself, you're sitting there arguing and back and forth on a social media and thinking that being a part of a Twitter mob is power, but being part of a Twitter mob is not power. I mean, being a part of Twitter, it does not really impact anything long term as related to business. Twitter is not the world. And this is another thing that your Portland Mafia and your Whisper Network doesn't understand. You're whispering on social media, and you're making all this noise on social media, but social media is not the world. The world with the casual readers out here, the other 7.6 billion people out here, they're not concerned about your product. They don't care about your product. They don't care about your drama on social media. They don't care about your Twitter mob. And they look at you and go, you're nobody I need to take seriously because you're not important. I mean, when I look at this, I like you don't understand what life is like in the real world because you're in the rose-colored world. And in the rose-colored world, you think that your drama is the big thing. But in the real world, people look at you and they laugh at you because they know that you sitting here thinking that you got a guy fired off writing a comic that gets 7,000 orders or maybe even 5,000 or even 2,000 orders in some cases. That's nothing. I mean, you can take a commercial paperback and it'll get 20,000 sales, and that author will look at you and go, you thinking this is something? No. There are more people who know this character in a romance novel and the series of romance novels than they know what you're talking about regarding this comic book character. And what a lot of these people in the Portland Mafia and the Whisper Network do is they want to go out here and incite fear inside of many of these simps, because the simps, they sit on social media watching all of this drama going on, and they're thinking that this is something serious, but it's not serious at all. And a lot of times these simps, again, what these women do is they want to use your emotional attachment to these characters as a way to try to get control over you. And this is something many comic fans really need to understand about this so-called Portland Mafia and these so-called Whisper Network. These females want to try to control you through your emotional attachment to these characters. And because they believe that they are working at places like Marvel and DC, and they are editors in charge of these characters, or they know people who work with these characters, what they want to do is use your emotional attachment to get leverage over you, because they know, how emotionally attached you are to these characters, how much these characters mean to you, how much these characters are a part of your personal life. And there was something you grew up with that means something to you, and they use that as a bludgeon to beat you up with. But this is where you have to stop thinking about your emotional attachment to these characters. You have to do something I had to do way back in '95 with Marvel and 2011 with DC, and you have to let those characters go. Now, that's a painful thing for many comic fans to think about, in letting these characters go, but this character is no longer representing what you knew when you were growing up. So you have to have the courage to just say, look, okay, you want to go in that direction with this character, go ahead in that direction with that character, but this is my money, And if you want my money, you're going to give me what I want. And if you don't want to give me what I want, then it's more money in my pocket. And if you don't respect me, then I don't even have a reason to even discuss anything with you, because if you can't give me respect, then you don't get my money. It's just as simple as that. Now, I'm reading here. Yeah, he says social media is not the real world, but they try to use it to destroy people's reps. But the whole thing is, you can't destroy your rep unless you allow it to destroy your rep. Now, last year this time, I did a video on passports and black men, and people tried to create mobs to try to come after me, but I just hung in there and had the discipline and resolve to hang in there. And that's what Jay Lee has to do. He has to understand that these SJW mobs, as they're called, have no real power. I mean, these people, they're what I call keyboard warriors. They're bad on the keyboard, but in real life, they can't harm you, and they can't harm your professional reputation, because I know of people like Chris Brown who want to work with Jay Lee, and this could lead to him getting more gigs overall, because it's not for the social media mob to dictate who works. It is for the marketplace to dictate who works. And that's something many guys in the comic book industry really need to start thinking about. You should not let somebody tell you who to work with. This is your money, and you decide who you want to work with. Because one of the things that that's a big problem with a lot of these simps, what's going on, Soul Provider and Yukasama 2001, big problem with a lot of these guys in the comic book industry is they're thinking, oh, if I go out here and work with this one, they're going to come after me, not understanding you're the one who controls the dollars. And if you are the one in charge of the company, you are the one in charge of the money being spent. I don't have to listen to somebody who is, one, looking to be a contractor for me, and two, somebody who is not on my payroll. I don't have to listen to those people, because I'm the one signing checks. I don't have to listen to people on a social media mob, because they're not out here spending any of this money, and they're not interested in spending any of this money. They'll get involved in the controversy, but we ain't gonna see any of these people inside of a comic book store looking to put some money on the table. And they're not looking to go out here and spend a single dollar on a single thing that they complain about. So when I look at them the same way when I was a kid, I would look at the foreign store owners like they were Hispanic and Asian store owners. When a guy would come in the store and he would just stand around, they would just tell him to get out of the store because he's not buying anything. So he didn't take them seriously. And that's what people in the comic book industry have to start doing, is saying, look, I don't need to take these people seriously. You're sitting in front of a keyboard, being a keyboard warrior, but you're not somebody who's spending a single dime on a single product, and you're not doing anything at all. And you have people who I'm hiring as contractors and who are working work for hire, sitting here talking about, oh, we have all this influence. How do you have influence when you work for somebody else? An influencer is somebody who works for themselves, and somebody who can go out here and, again, make their own deals and make deals that pull profit for them. That's what a person who is a serious player in the industry is. Somebody who owns intellectual property, somebody who controls intellectual property, somebody who can go out here and commission and hire writers and artists, not somebody who is, oh, I'm a part of the so-called Portland Mafia, and I tell people I don't have any jobs. I'm not a publisher. I have no, that's not an influencer. That's a joker. And people in the comic book industry need to understand what a joker is and understand from a business perspective what a joker is. Because again, if these were big wheels, they would not be in this small pond. They would not be in the lowest pond in the publishing industry. No, they would be out here, again, producing novels, which is considered a high-end in the publishing industry product, or they would produce the ultimate product, a nonfiction book. These are the products they'd be producing. And if there's such big wheels in the comic book industry, then why are they still over at Marvel and DC and Image? That's another critical question many of the guys out here need to start asking themselves. Why are they still working here? And when we see guys like Ethan Van Sciver and many others making $1 million and $2 million out here, why are you still working in the comic book industry if you're such a threat to everyone? Why aren't you out here developing projects like your own comic and your own intellectual property? Why aren't you going out here and developing a project on a platform which you have a lot of woke people on, Kickstarter? Or why aren't you going out here and launching an Indiegogo in an effort to get those dollars from those comic fans? That's another question people need to ask the people in the so-called Whisper Network and the Portland Mafia. If you're such big wheels, why are you sitting there taking small change from Marvel and DC and Image? In the case of Image, you're actually paying to put this book out here. And why are you taking the small crumbs when you can make your own bread? Another critical question many of the simps out here aren't asking. Why, if this woman is such a big wheel, why isn't she going out here writing up a script like I did for the ISIS graphic novel? Why isn't she going out here and looking to hire an artist like I did for the Easting No Good Deed strip? And why isn't she looking to go out here and get ready to launch something like I want to do again with an Indiegogo for the ISIS graphic novel again? Why aren't these people going out here and putting their money where their mouth is? I mean, if you're such a big wheel, you should have enough money to hire an artist to go out here and be able to draw and letter whatever script you have. You should be able to go out here and present a project on Indiegogo. And you should be able to go out here and do this, because this is going to be a further expansion of showing how big an influence you have, because you're going to be out here with your own intellectual property. And if you have all of these so-called connections, then you should have no problem getting a project funded very quickly. And again, these are things that people in the comic book industry aren't really thinking about as related to these females. They're sitting there, oh, we're big wheels, we have these networks, we have this group. If you're such big wheels, then why don't you go out here in the arena and compete with the men? And that's the question, again, many comic fans need to ask themselves. If these females are so powerful, if they are so influential, why aren't they going out and leaving Marvel, DC, Valiant, all these companies where they collect a paycheck? Why aren't they going out and starting an Indiegogo to start their own publishing company? Why aren't they trying to make connections with editors at these trade publishers in order to get expanded distribution? Why aren't they trying to network with people in the publishing business towards licensing and merchandising a character they created? These are the questions that workplace simps don't ask, because they learn to be afraid of females. They learn to be afraid of female authority figures. And they learn this in environments like female-headed households. They learn, oh, I can't question the female, I can't challenge the female. But any rational, critical thinking publisher or businessman, he's going to start asking those hard questions. And he's going to say, you've been here for 5 years at this company. And yeah, you've learned editing and stuff, but why aren't you creating your own characters? Why would I want to work with somebody else's characters when I can go out here and create my own characters, own the intellectual property, own the right to go out here and be able to make deals with different companies here and internationally? Why am I working for $40,000 a year or $30,000 a year when I could be making 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 million dollars and living very well on intellectual property, which will turn into wealth building assets. Why am I, working for this small salary? And why am I not using the small salary I have to go out here and do things like try to find writers, or if I can't write a project, trying to find an artist to draw up a project, or trying to hire a letterer to lay out the letters on a script? And why am I not working on a script? These are questions that many of the comic YouTubers aren't asking about these groups. They write articles about these groups because, as someone, again, who's worked in publishing and knows publishing for over 25 years, I'm asking the tough questions. And when you start to look at this group who's gotten so-called control over comics, you see how weak they are and how little power they have. And the only reason why people are scared of them is because you have guys who don't have their mind in the right place. And that's par for the course when it comes with a workplace simp. A workplace simp, his mind is not in the right place because he thinks all females are just like his mother. And because he thinks females have power like his mother, he's intimidated by those females, and he doesn't have the backbone or the stones to go out here and check females who go out here and want to go out here and play these games like these women in the comic book industry are doing. Now, a guy who knows how things go, he's not afraid of these women to call them out. He's not afraid to get face to face and let them know that in this real world, you're not a big fish. You're not a big wheel. If you had it like that, you wouldn't be here trying to scavenge 1,000, 2,000 sales at a smaller company like Dynamite, or 8 to 10,000 sales at a company like Marvel or DC. No, you're going to go for the big payday in trade paperbacks and try to get to the 100,000 sales like J.K. Rowling usually gets per week on a Harry Potter book. And you're going to go for the millions of sales that J.K. Rowling gets on Harry Potter. You're going to go for the big money. You're not going to keep staying in this small comic book industry. You're only staying here because you can't go anyplace else. And you're staying here because you're afraid to go anyplace else, because you know if you have to enter arenas like trade publishing and the nonfiction world, you couldn't compete because you just don't have the skills. And that's something many of the beta males are too afraid to say to your so-called Portland Mafia and your Whisper Network. If these people had those skills like I have, and I'm not that great of a writer, they would be out here again looking to compete in trade paperbacks. They'd be out here looking to compete in the world of nonfiction and research. And they would be out here looking to make the big paper because their talent would be able to allow them to go out here and make the big paper. They would be out here and they would have that ability again, and they would be able to create their own intellectual properties. But a lot of these guys in the comic book industry, they sit there, I'm afraid of this female, but this female's nothing to be afraid of. This female has no real power. If she, again, yes, they can go out here and use their gossip to scare you and intimidate you. But once you start filtering through the BS and you start thinking critically about the BS, you start saying, if this guy was all that, then why is he here? If this woman was all that, then why is she here? I mean, what is a Twitter mob? What is if your professional reputation is where you can go out here and produce product quickly, then somebody saying something on Twitter should not phase that at all. I mean, if you're a writer like myself, I mean, again, I've gone from nonfiction to fiction to serialized books. I mean, if you can show that type of skill set, some tweet on Twitter cannot really phase that, because you are showing you can go out here and produce work consistently. You can produce work regularly. And that's what a professional publisher should be thinking about. They shouldn't be getting into their feelings, but when you have beta males in charge, the beta male, he gets caught up in feelings, and he gets caught up in image and how things look. And oh, this one said something, and that's some female stuff right there. Men don't get into that because they know, look, what somebody wrote on Twitter today, unless it is him talking about he loves white supremacy or he's putting up Confederate flags, then that's nothing I need to worry about. This guy is going to go out here and get me consistent sales. And in publishing, your reputation is primarily based on consistent sales. Thank you for the super chat, Night Crusader. I really appreciate it. If you guys want to donate to the let me see, the Cash App, you can donate to the Cash App, and I really appreciate that because that's how I pay for the internet, and that's also how I am able to do these live streams. But the whole thing is, if they had it like that, again, it would not be in the comic book industry, and they would not be trying to run a comic book industry into the ground. And when I look at a lot of the guys in the comic book industry, it's clear to me they need to grow a backbone, they need to grow some stones, and they need to start checking these females in these groups. They're not these sugar and spice, everything nice, nor are they, these victims. I keep belching sometimes because I have gas, but they're not these victims that they perceive themselves to be, because they'll sit there and talk about how they're oppressed and how things are so bad. Well, if it's so bad, how are you getting these jobs, and how are you getting these jobs regularly? I mean, if you're getting employed, then it's not as bad as you think it is. And if you're getting jobs, then how are you oppressed? So a lot of these guys, they have to grow their backbone and their stones and take a red pill and see what's real about these groups and really see them as being completely full of it and completely being nothing more than a bunch of liars who want to stir up drama. Because when females, in their efforts, the things that they use is to stir up drama. That's how they gain power. And they gain power by starting rumors and gossip. And the only people they get power with is other females and simps and beta males, because beta males and simps think like females. And because beta males and simps think like females, what happens is they wind up getting caught up in females gossip, females drama, and then believing these females have power that they don't have. Because again, if these women were such truly big wheels in the publishing business, then they would be looking to move ahead, not stay in the same place. Only a really terrible person in their craft looks to stay in the same place. No, seasoned people who want to learn a craft, what they want to do is learn more skills. They want to pick up more skills, because as a writer myself, I remember, after I started doing novels, a family member gave me a book about screenplays, and then I wrote my first screenplay. And then I went out and branched out into nonfiction after one of my best-selling author friends read one of my blogs and said, hey, your style is really good. You should write a nonfiction book. So you're going to look to want to grow in your craft. You're going to want to look to further develop your skills. You're going to want to look to get better at what you do. And you're going to want to look to hone those skills and make those skills even better. And you're not going to look to say, oh, I'm just going to stay here at this low level doing these comics. No, you're going to want to go out here and say, look, I've done this comic. Now I'm going to try to do a novel. I'm going to try to do a screenplay. I'm going to look to continue, or I'm going to look to go out here and do some nonfiction. I'm going to look to get my skills up to another level, so that when I go out here and I go to and sell myself either to a publisher or to another company, or even start expanding into owning intellectual property, I can go to investors and say, okay, when I go out here, I have 20 years experience or 25 years experience. I have written fiction in novels. I have written serialized fiction. I have written nonfiction. I have screenplays. I have written teleplays. I have a array of writing experience and skills. I have studied grant writing. That's what you're going to be able to say to somebody. It's not going to be like what we see in the comic book industry. Oh, we want to discredit this guy to hire this guy. That's some female stuff. And that just, again, shows the weakness of the men when they allow females to go out here and sabotage their business by using rumors and gossip, because only a weak man is going to sit there and listen to a female's gossip. No, a man, when he hears this BS, he's going to investigate himself. And once he finds out it's BS, he's going to say, look, I'm going to set the tone for how business is done here. I'm going to set the standards for how business is done here. And if people want information about anything, they can come to me, because I am going to be the source, and I'm going to shut these females down and let them know that if they want to talk about business that's not theirs, they can go find another business to go work at. That's what a leader is going to say to the women in these workplaces. They're going to assert their authority. They're going to impose order. And that might be something people call misogynist or sexist, but no, that is what a leader does. And a leader is somebody who does not let others run his business. He takes care of his business. He is the one in charge of his business, and he does not allow others to tell him how to do his business, especially people who are not on his payroll and people who are coming to him for a job. If you're coming to me for a job, you're working on my terms. And if you don't like working for my terms, there is the door. And if you're so good and you have all of these influences and connections, then go out here, start your own Kickstarter, start your own Indiegogo, launch your own comics, and show me how you can make this money. Because if you could make that kind of money, again, you wouldn't be looking to work for me. And that's how it is when you have somebody who understands the business. But in the comic book industry, we have a simp problem. And when you have an infestation of simps, simps look to go out here and please the women, not understanding it's not your job to please women. It is your job to take care of the company's business. And it is your job to get sales, because when you're out here getting sales, you're building your reputation and you're building your brand. That's what you're supposed to be focused on. If you're working in a comic book company, you're supposed to be working on, my goal is getting these sales up, because these sales numbers are the thing that's going to guarantee me my next job or lead to me getting booked on my next job. If I can go into a comic book publisher and say, oh, I worked on this book that was $7,000 when I started, and now it's $35,000 in terms of sales, then then I'm showing how I'm an asset to that company, and I'm showing how I can go out here and book other gigs. So when you're sitting there and you're in a comic book company and you have written a book and it's only gotten 7,000 orders and it barely gets 2,000 sales, what does that say about that writer? And what does that say about many of these so-called Whisper Network and Portland Mafia writers? It says that they're terrible writers. It says that they cannot really sell. And it says that they really aren't good at anything. When you look at what's on their page, you don't see a strong page, because I've read a lot of these comics and the pages aren't strong, the action isn't strong, and I can see why their sales are low. But if you say that to these types of people, you're a misogynist, you're a sexist, you're this or that, that shaming language does not face the facts as related to the business. And you need somebody there who can say, look, your numbers just aren't there. I'm not hiring you because of whatever issue, whatever racism, sexism you're trying to propose. I'm hiring you because of what's on this page. what's on this page is just not up to standard, and your sales numbers just aren't up to standard for me to spend money on a production run of a single issue of your project. Yak Diesel, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. He asks, would you say the situation with mainstream comics is too foregone? Think it's best to implode and rebuild with qualified folks like you? I'd say that, yeah, this situation, the problem is the simp infestation is too deep these days. It's not much anybody can do about it when it comes down to mainstream comics. I mean, you have too many simps there. You have too many dysfunctional females there. So the best thing to do, yeah, is let it implode, because there's nothing anybody can do at this point. Because when you have workplace simps in a business, that business is on its way to practically going into ruin. Because I saw that on Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares. I've seen it on his 24 Hours to Hell and Back show. I've seen it on many of his shows. Many of these shows, he shows how these beta males practically implode these businesses. When I look at the comic book industry, it's like one of those businesses Gordon tried to save, but there was nothing he could do about it. And even in face of his best efforts, the beta males are just too unwilling to make changes, and they're too afraid of conflict to make those changes. And when I look at the industry, it's in bad shape because you have beta males who just don't want to confront women and don't want to call out women and hold females accountable for their unprofessional behavior, and to set a line in the sand as related to standards, and set a line related as to who is in charge. And when I look at companies, again, I look at Jim Lee's completely ineffective leadership as related to the whole Tom King situation. It just shows me that we're in a bad place, and it's just getting worse. I mean, that's just not leadership right there. I mean, this is something basic as related to publishing, and he let it explode into social media drama instead of taking Tom King to the side and checking him, because Tom King is not a superstar writer. He's not Mr. 100,000 sales. In fact, he tanked Batman sales, and that's the kind of writer I pull to the side, and I let him know that you're not bigger than the character. You're not a superstar like you think you are, and you need to check yourself, because you are a contract player. And yeah, you can go to one of these other companies, but this is how it goes here. And here you are at one of the top tier companies. You're acting like a clown, and that's what a leader's going to tell you. Look, we don't need this type of prima donna behavior here. Either you're part of the team, or you can just leave, because we don't need this here. Everybody knows their part when you're working on a contract project. You were contracted to write a script. You did your part. You have no say, again, over those interiors. You have no say over the letters. You have no say over who I put on a variant cover. When I put something on a variant cover, that was actually meant to help you. But because you're a beta male and you want to try to get brownie points, because with the women in the Portland Mafia and the Whisper Network, you just want to go out here and attack this other man, not understanding how much of a simp you're looking like. Because that's what another reason why the workplace simps do things, because they want to get brownie points with these women, not understanding these women in the workplace are not people you should be looking to pander to, because these same females you're looking to pander to are the same females who will look to get you fired sooner rather than later. Because that's what happens with a lot of these simps. They look to pander to these women in the workplace, and they eventually become the sexual harassers. And they'll sit there and be like, oh, I'm going to be the nice guy who just is all for women, and I'm all supporting women. But these guys are the biggest misogynists in the room. Now, when I look at Tom King, I practically see everything I talked about in my book, Manginas. They look like men, but they act like ladies. And that ebook, that's one of my books that has done over, I think, 2,000 to 3,000 sales. And when I look at Tom King, I see a textbook classic mangina. And workplace manginas are some of the most dangerous guys to deal with. And you really have to be very careful with these kind of guys. And I talk about them in Stop Simping in the Workplace too. And this guy will practically, he tells lies, he hides information, he kisses up to people, and then he stabs people in the back. So this is a very, very dangerous workplace predator. And when you're dealing with a workplace mangina, this guy, I mean, because I've experienced them and worked with them, these guys wreak havoc on businesses and they practically destroy companies from within. They're like a workplace termite. They come in looking to kiss up to the females and looking to sabotage your best male workers. And they look to go out here and try to do this because they want to try to move themselves ahead at other people. So this workplace mangina is a very dangerous person, and Tom King has shown himself to be a workplace mangina and a very dangerous one because he's sitting there looking to, again, sabotage people like he did with Jay Lee and sabotage DC Comics. He's thinking he's getting brownie points with the with these females, but he's not getting brownie points. They're laughing at him, and they're laughing hard, and they're looking at him and saying, look at this tool. And what they do is they use a tool like him for their own, to do their dirty work. And then once they finish getting their dirty work done, they get rid of the tool. And that's what many of the editors in the comic book industry really need to start thinking about, because whenever you're dealing with a predatory female, she will just, after she finishes using you to go out here and do her dirty work, what will happen is they will eventually turn on you, either with a Me Too sexual harassment allegation, or they will work behind the scenes to get you fired, because a lot of times these females have lots of secrets and they want to make sure that those secrets stay buried. So they look to get rid of you and they look to destroy you so that they can keep their secrets from coming out. And these are things that, again, a lot of guys in the comic book industry aren't really thinking about, because a lot of guys in the comic book industry, they're very inexperienced when it comes to women. They're very inexperienced when it comes to business. They don't have the life skills or the seasoning in order to deal with women. They don't have the life skills to know how to deal with female predators. They can't identify female predators, and they don't understand how they're being targeted, or how they have a target on their back. And then because they don't know about the target on their back, these guys wind up getting taken out by these females and practically destroyed and left bitter, and usually in some cases bitter and broke, and left in front of the garbage with people making soup out of their bones. So a lot of these guys, they really need to understand that these groups, again, they don't have the power they think they have. And the only reason why you believe they have power is because, again, you're used to female authority figures. You're used to submitting to female authority figures. You believe women have power that they don't actually have. And again, if they were so powerful, they would not be looking to work at a company like a Marvel or a DC. They would be out here like Ethan Van Sciver and guys like Chris Brown and Raymond Leonard out here with their own Indiegogos. They would be out here looking to make their own money. They would be looking to own their own property. But when it comes down to many women, they're looking to be secure. So they're looking for a paycheck to be secure. But most men, they know that they have to take risks in order to get rewards. And in order to get those rewards, they have to come out here and be vulnerable, and be vulnerable by saying, hey, I'm going to put my own stuff out here and try to make as much, and try to put it out here and see what's going to happen. And these people don't want to do that, and they want to try to eliminate people because they want to make sure that their place is secure. in the comic book business. But the only reason why they're coming to the comic book business is because they can't compete in the traditional publishing world, and they cannot compete in the indie publishing world. So they come to comic books because no other place will take them, no other place will tolerate them, and no other place will accept them because people in other parts of the publishing industry, they have higher standards. And when they look at this person's work and they look at their work rate, they're going, this guy can't really put together a cohesive sentence. This person can't put together a cohesive paragraph. And they look at them and go, look, you can't really put together an argument or even a sequence for your story. You're not bringing anything to my table that's going to increase my business. You don't have a core audience for this book. With your concept is fundamentally flawed. You don't even have a core audience that I can tap into for this product. Because I've seen a lot of these so-called creators as a part of this group. I look at a lot of their projects and I sit there and I go, okay, what audience were you going for with this book? I mean, if I'm as a publisher, if you brought this to me, I would sit there and say, okay, what audience is this going to be targeted at? And who are we trying to sell this to? And then after I read like 4 or 5 pages, I ask the questions, who is the main character? What do they want? And why should we care? And most importantly, you aren't giving me a reason to care about anything in this book. And in a lot of cases, you're showing me you don't have enough experience as a writer. You don't have enough seasoning to be writing anything. Because when I look at a lot of these people who are a part of this Portland Mafia and Whisper Network, a lot of these writers don't have seasoning. They don't have the experience. And when they present a subject, it's not in any sort of cohesive fashion that really presents points that really either give me a compelling story, a multidimensional character, or a full reading experience. And these are things that simps are too afraid to tell these women. And these are things that any other editor would sit down and say, look, this story's premise is just not well thought out. These characters are underdeveloped. There's no reason for the reader to care about anything going on. And it looks like you're just putting a bunch of your emotions on the page. And I can't sell emotion to readers. I need characters. I need story. I need you to put action together in a very efficient fashion. I need you to put together something that I can put together and create a product that can be sold to readers. And I need you to really think about what audience you're going to sell this to, because I'm not going to spend money going out here hiring artists, money to spend on letterers, money to spend on colorists on a project where you haven't really thought anything out, and you're just going to put up a bunch of feelings talking about how you don't like Donald Trump. Well, you not liking Donald Trump does not sell books for me, and you not liking Donald Trump, that might be a message you want to sell, or you might want to push your "I hate the patriarchy" message. This is not something I can put in a comic book and make a product out of. So I really can't hire you because this doesn't meet any standard for anything. We need more editors like that, and not these simps working in the comic book industry, because simps, they give passes to women, and when they give passes to women, they wind up putting businesses like Marvel Comics and DC Comics and the entire comic book industry on the brink. And I believe one of the big problems we have is this simp infestation. And again, usually when you have a simp infestation, that's where the end is for a business, because the simp is so caught up in trying to get the attention and approval of women, he winds up alienating his core customer base of men. And when he alienates his core customer base of men, he winds up losing all of the ways of making money for himself. And that's par for the course for the workplace simp, because a simp is so caught up in his feelings about women that he doesn't understand when he goes to work He's here to go take care of business. And when he doesn't take care of business, what happens is you get competitors who come in on the indie market. And that's why we're seeing all these indie comics blowing up and becoming popular, because you have all of these simps in the comic book industry, and these simps don't check any of the women in the workplace. And many of these beta males, they are so afraid of conflict, they don't understand the greatest conflict they're going to have to deal with is unemployment. And thank you, Bleeding Fool, for coming out to the live stream. I really appreciate it. I had to make this one because I look at the story of Whisper Network and Portland Mafia, and I really want to bring it to people from a publisher's perspective, because I see the problem in the comic book industry. I see the simp problem we have, and I see the biggest problem we have with these guys is they don't know how to check women. They don't know how to take the lead. And this is hurting the industry overall, us not going out here and having guys who can take charge and run the business. They're so busy trying to please the women and try to appeal to make their political agendas go on. And it's hurting the industry overall. And this simp infestation in the comic book industry is just doing major damage. And I look at it as something that we really need to look at, that people aren't looking at, because if the men in the industry aren't leading, then who are they following? And if the people they're following, they're not looking to build any sort of business. They're just here because they can't go anywhere else. Because again, if they could go someplace else, they would have been someplace else. They'd be like me, again, making my own books like I do with Temptation of John Haynes, and books like the ISIS series and John Haynes series, or the ultimate, again, nonfiction like The Man Crisis. And we have a simp problem in this comic book industry. And the simp problem is these guys have to get their heads in the game. They have to get their mind right. They have to get their stuff together, because they're not looking to do business. They're looking to please women. But you can't please, your job is not to please women. Your job is to sell comics. And that's what comics has a big problem, is these low-T beta males are looking to go out here and make women happy, but making women happy does not make you money. So yeah, John F., that the problem is that you have two sides of it. It's like the simp is like his two sides of the coin. The simp will go out here and abuse women, but he will also go out here and pander to women. So you have a simp in the industry. He doesn't really know how to deal with women in the workplace, because again, he comes from an environment where he's submissive to women. So you'll have guys who think that they can go out here because they don't know what the boundaries are. When you have a workplace simp, like you have with the guys who are alleged to have participated in abusing women and at cons and stuff, they come from a place of seeing women as objects. They don't see women as people. And then you have the other guys who just come from the place of being completely submissive, and they all do damage to the comic book industry, because instead of us focusing on stories and characters, we have guys looking to pander to women and push stories like this identity politics and all of this social justice. That comes from the simping, and the simping is them not understanding that if you're not running the business is running you. And these guys, they participate in some of the most effeminate, dysfunctional behavior I have ever seen. I mean, men don't act like this. I mean, men, again, they understand that if you have an issue with somebody, you go face to face with that person. You don't do what Tom King did, which was so cowardly. I mean, going after another man on social media and attacking him. You go face to face with your editor, and he didn't want to do that because he was a beta male and afraid of conflict with his boss. And these guys, they do this because they're really weak and childish. Again, junior high school behavior. Grown men don't act like this. Grown men don't behave like this. And grown men, again, they set structure, they set order, they establish standards, and they are focused on the goals of producing great comics and great comic stories. And this is what happens when you let weak men take control of an industry. They let the females take over and take charge. And that's what's happening right now with this Whisper Network and these Portland Mafia. You got these weak guys who gave women a pass to come in. And these women, again, aren't working there. So they don't understand how this makes them look weak to other industries and how they look to other businessmen like myself. I look at you and go, that's a weak guy. I mean, he's sitting there complaining about this group who is getting a paycheck from him when he has the power to shut that down by saying, look, if you want to get my paycheck, you do business on my terms. And if you don't want to work here, hey, there's the door. You go start an Indiegogo, start your own business. I mean, that's what strong men do. And that's what the CEO of Red Bull did when he ran into woke types. I mean, I read an article on that. CEO of Red Bull, the woke types came to him talking about all of this diversity and social justice, and he fired them. And that was the end of it. Same thing with the CEO of Barilla Pasta. They came to him with that nonsense, and he fired them. He said, look, if you're not here to sell Red Bull drinks, then you shouldn't be here. Same thing with the boss of Barilla Pasta. And there were no Twitter mobs coming after them. And even if they did, the boss of Twitter, I mean, not the boss of Twitter, the boss of Barilla didn't care. Same thing with the boss of Red Bull. He sat there and said, look, I don't care about these woke types. They don't buy my product. And they don't, since you don't buy my product, I don't care what you have to say. If you're not about the business of Red Bull, if you're not about the business of Barilla, you can leave, because this is our focus. This is what we're about. And if you want to go be about something else, you can hit the bricks. And that's what people in the comic book industry need to start saying. We need guys to get backbones and stones in this business to say, look, if you're not about the business of such and such company and selling comics, then you don't need to be here, and you can go someplace else, because that's what a strong boss does in the business world. He says, look, this is about dollars, and that's the only thing that matters, because if it's not about dollars, it doesn't make sense. And that's what a strong businessman does. He's like, look, if it's not about dollars, it's not about cents. And I'm not going to, yeah, these women may work in these places, but if they're not about taking care of business, they can leave, and there's the door. And if there's such big wheels and have such pull, then why not go out here and start either an Indiegogo of your own, or like in the publishing industry, we have a lot of editors. If they're big wheels, they go out and leave and become literary agents, and they sell and get commissions. Again, that's what people do when they're a part of a business. They look to start their own business and expand on that business, because most people who were editors at places like Chris was talking about, like Scholastic and many of these other companies, they go out and become agents, and they go out here and get money on commission for themselves. They don't sit there and stay in the job. That just, again, shows that this person really has stalled. And again, I look at this whole comic book industry, and it just has the weakest leadership at this point. I mean, we don't have leadership like we had with Jeanette Kahn or Jim Shooter. We don't have anybody helming with strength and confidence. We don't have anybody, working towards a standard for those comics. So we really need that type of leadership, in this industry. And you can't get leadership from a simp, because a simp is a follower. And when you have a guy with a follower mindset, he's not going to be able to go anywhere, because he can't set a direction unless a female tells him to. And that's not a good place for any type of male to be in, because if you're being led by the female, you're going to go nowhere. And when you're led by a female, you're going to wind up in a place that's even worse than you were before, because after she uses you to get what she wants, she's going to toss you to the side. And a lot of people in the comic industry really need to understand something about Twitter. Twitter really doesn't have that much power, doesn't have that much influence. I mean, Twitter, I've been using Twitter to promote books for years, and the sales that I got were marginal at best. I mean, I get more sales from other platforms than I do from Twitter. So when you look at these Twitter mobs, don't get scared of them. They're not anybody to be scared of. Again, this is a keyboard warrior, and a keyboard warrior is not a customer, because a customer is somebody who actually spends money and somebody who is willing to spend money on a regular basis. A keyboard warrior is just somebody who sits there and complains and really isn't a threat to you. And you shouldn't be fazed by Twitter mobs or things like that, because after a while, they can't really destroy anyone. I mean, females always try to destroy somebody's name and reputation, but if your reputation is strong and your work rate is strong, you can overcome any type of attack like that by showing you produce stuff on the regular. And that's why those guys who do Indiegogos aren't fazed by, these Twitter mobs, because all they know how to do is talk, but you know how to go out here and participate in action. Now, I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream. I want to thank everybody for coming out to the stream. If you guys want to pick up some of my SJS Direct publications, like The Man Crisis, I believe a lot of people in the comic book industry need to pick this book up, because a lot of the men in the comic book industry are in crisis. This book really teaches you about some of the male life skills you didn't get, and it teaches you about the things you need to understand how to survive in the world. And you also need to definitely pick up Stop Simping in the Workplace, because this book will teach you how to deal with female predators in the workplace. Teach you how to deal with female predators in the workplace and their rhetoric and their gossip, and how to shut that down. And it'll teach you approaches on how to shut down predatory females in the workplace and identify predatory females in the workplace. And you definitely want to pick up Stop Simping. This is another book that I believe a lot of guys in the comic industry need to read, because this book will help you deal with, again, predatory women, and it also help you deal with the simp paradigm. It will teach you about the simp paradigm and how this paradigm is destructive to men out here, because we have so many simps in the not only the comic book world, the sci-fi world. I have a PayPal. It's my email, Yukasama, and I'm gonna leave that in the links for the chat. You can, if you want to do a PayPal, you can do it donation to PayPal through sjsdirectamerica@gmail.com, or you can donate to the Cash App. I'll leave a link to that again. But I want to see the comic book industry, even if it's not Marvel and DC, go out here and thrive. And one of the ways it's going to thrive is if we deal with these simps, these workplace predators. And because if you don't have your head in the game, even if you go out here and launch a Kickstarter, you're going to wind up getting taken advantage of by these woke types, these female predators. And you're thinking that because they're loud, they're intimidating, but they're not intimidating at all. Once you start to filter their rhetoric, you see that these people are full of it. You see that these people are really weak. And you see that there's nothing to be scared of. And that's what I want guys in the comic book industry to understand, is that these people are nothing to be scared of. Again, when a guy who is seasoned can look at them and tell you, look, this guy, if he was such a big wheel, if these people were such big wheels, they wouldn't be here. They would be higher up in the publishing pecking order, and they're nothing to be scared of. I mean, if they're looking to book jobs, that shows you that they're nobody to be serious, because people who are serious, again, they have their own Indiegogos. They're owning their own intellectual properties. They're looking to move their careers forward, and they're looking to own something and build wealth. And somebody who's a part of a mob on a social media platform, they're too busy with their fingers to the keyboard on attacking somebody else to focus on their projects and what they need to do. I mean, a writer like myself, usually we're so busy working on projects, we don't have much time for social media outside of promotion. And we don't have much time outside of, promotional events like I do, like this live stream, to talk to people. So we're not on Twitter all day long arguing and going back and forth with people. We're focusing on our business, taking care of what we need to get taken care of. And we're focused on getting towards goals that will move us forward and move us forward towards increasing our sales, increasing our profitability, and allowing us to get more customers. That's what we're going to be focused on. And you don't really see that with these, well, again, Portland mafias and whisper networks. They're so busy gossiping and going back and forth, they're not focused on the business of making money. And that's hurting the business of comics overall. And I hate to see comics go out like this, because this was the medium where I learned how to read. And when I see guys like this not looking to move forward, it's just, again, I wanted to help out by saying, look, this simping in the comic book industry, it just has to stop, because the simping is the thing that I've seen destroy businesses. And the people in the comic book industry don't know how bad their business is, or how on the brink it is. Because if you watch shows, again, like Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares and Hotel Hell and all of them, you can see the beta male behavior, and you can see how it hurts their business. And those same behaviors are the same ones I see going on in the comic book industry. But I'm going to wrap up tonight's stream. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream. And again, you can pick up books like The Man Crisis, John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, ISIS, The Main Event. These are 2 books in the 2020 catalog. And The Temptation of John Haynes on Amazon.com. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out to the stream, and I hope you'll be there for next week's stream.